Hi, welcome to episode 2 of Mela. I'm Anita Mayu,
Rene Whitmore.
and we're here for recording from great old Simmesport, Louisiana,
Home of Mayla Productions.
LLC.
Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and
Share.
share. That's right. And links to merchandise on Zazzle is in the description down below. Take a look at that.
Also, our Facebook, Instagram pages the links will be down below, and be on the lookout for our TikTok and Twitter accounts.
And we're two people who grew up in Simmesport, Louisiana, which we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about today, and about how we grew up, who we grew up with, and things that basically formed the way we did grow up.
Right. We'll talk about our culture, our Cajun ancestry, the people, places, and things that have defined who we are as the people we are today.
Yeah, yeah, and also the Simmesport itself sits right in the middle of Louisiana. We'll put a picture on the screen so you can see exactly where. And we are right on the banks of the Atchafalaya River. I think the swiftest flowing river in the United States.
It is actually the swiftest and most dangerous river in the United States.
That is true.
There's actually one other river more swift and dangerous, and that's the Amazon.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. Actually, you can go to the Corps of Engineer at the hydroelectric plant at Three Rivers. If you go up, I don't even know the name of the highway. It would be past the locks and stuff.
Yeah.
They actually have a map of the Mississippi River and the Atchafalaya River along these walls. Well, they used to. I don't know if they still do. And the Atchafalaya River and some parts of it, they couldn't even find a bottom. It was so deep, and it's been so swift. It's carved out so much. It went from like being a small bayou to now it's a huge river. I don't even know how wide it is.
Yeah, and it varies from season, with the high waters and such. And because Simmesport sits on a major river, of course, river was the major way of transportation back in the day. It's kind of unique from the other towns in the parish, the smaller ones like Moorville and stuff, because we had more various people that would come in and out with river traffic. So you had mainly French influence, some Cajun, Acadian exiles that settled here, families, but there were also Italian, Scot, German,
African Americans.
Yeah, all kinds of people, Irish,
Scottish,
right, that were coming in and out via the river.
Right.
Some settled here, some left.
It could be a major port city, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, because it sits just 4 miles.
There is a port here, but it's not utilized like it should be.
It's 4 miles downstream from the Old River Locks, where you could connect to the Mississippi.
Right.
And then I think just only 8 miles from where the Red River empties into the Atchafalaya.
Right.
So yeah, that's where Simmesport sits. And this is where we grew up. And of course, another thing of being a river was the fishing industry.
Right.
A lot of people made a living in the river. A lot of people grew up with relatives that fished in the river.
It's a fishing town. Like all of my ancestors, I'm like a descendant of 5 generations of fishermen on both sides, on my dad's side. On my mom's side, they were farmers. So all in all, I'm descended from hardworking, poor people, I guess you could say. Like, my family wasn't influential. They weren't plantation owners. They didn't own slaves that I know of. I'm still tracing my ancestry back, but they were all servant type people, hardworking farmers, fishermen, hunters, trappers, and I've done my DNA more on my dad's side than my mom's side so far, because it's a rabbit hole. When you get into that could take you months to decipher all of your ancestors. But up until the 1920s, when it became mandatory, I think, for children to attend school, my ancestors on my dad's side lived where they called up the river, near the three rivers where the Red River, Mississippi, and the Atchafalaya meet, at a place and in around Naples, which is no longer a town, but it's around the Bartlemville, Big Bend area.
Right.
So yeah, that's how they made their living: fishing, hunting, trapping, and they didn't move. There's no record of them being even recorded in the census until the 1920s. Not from when they were children, until the 1920s. Like my great grandfather and great grandmother, there's a recording of their births in the late 1800s, and then there's no record of them again till the 1920s, where they were in Simmesport.
Yeah, and you brought up Naples. That could be a whole episode into itself.
Oh yeah.
One of the things that happened is you had a large influx of Italians come out of New Orleans up through New Roads, and right on the western bank of the Atchafalaya where Simmesport sits, I guess about maybe 3 or 4 miles north of Simmesport, they formed a community called Naples. They named after Naples,
If
Italy.
you go through the cutoff, it's about that
cutoff,
far.
yeah.
If you go through Hamburg or Moorville, it's way further. It's like 15 miles.
Yeah, and again, if you have stories about this, please say so in the comments.
Yes.
But, well, what I'm guessing is when they built what we call now the old bridge, the railroad bridge, which was in the late 20s.
The old Sarto Bridge became obsolete.
Yeah, and so Naples kind of died out. And I guess it was a combination, too. The 27 flood probably wiped it out.
Right.
You know, that was a huge
flood. There's
a
bridge in Big Bend called the old Sarto Iron Bridge, and that used to be the railroad bridge that passed right through Naples.
Yeah.
And there's actually still pylons there. And people still go out there and with metal detectors and find like remnants of what was the town, like housing blocks.
Yeah,
and
there's still
nails
where the blacksmith was. You can still see that. Chimneys are out there.
I would love to go explore that. Actually, we could do that on one episode.
Yeah, it's best when you wait till the wintertime and the foliage dies back.
Right.
And it's pretty interesting to go out there.
Yeah.
And then, before that railroad bridge was built in Simmesport, you had to take a boat to cross the river. That was the only way to get across.
Right.
Back and forth. So that opened up, again, like the river. Now you had a bridge that connected New Roads and Baton Rouge with Simmesport
and
Avoyelles
Parish.
New Orleans
and Avoyelles Parish.
Right, combined with Highway 1.
Right.
That Huey Long built in the 30s. So, Simmesport was always a, not strange, but unusual compared to the rest of the parish. Mix of nationalities. It wasn't just primarily French.
So how did Simmesport get its name?
Yeah, well, Bennett B. Sims, who was a businessman and I think owned some boats.
I think he was a captain.
Yeah, he was a captain. Somehow found Simmesport. I don't know how, probably through some traffic, and settled here and built Whitehall Plantation in 1832.
Wasn't he one of the ones, if I'm not mistaken, that discovered that log jam?
He might have been. He might have been one
and
of the
was
original
in
ones.
part responsible for getting rid of it and
I think
allowing the Atchafalaya River to form.
I think he was one of the ones mainly that influenced them the Army Corps of Engineers to come and get rid of it.
It was like a 6-mile long log jam.
Yeah, because I've read mentions of it, though, all the way back to the late 1700s.
Yeah.
There were French explorers that talked about the log jam.
The Atchafalaya River, which we'll probably do an episode just on the river.
The river system.
It's a convergence of the Red River and Mississippi River that makes the Atchafalaya River.
Yeah, for those who don't know the system, the Atchafalaya River is on average about 11.5 feet lower than the Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So the Mississippi naturally wants to come into the Atchafalaya, and because it's a straight shot out to the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
But of course, if that happened, a major amount of water would be lost in Baton Rouge and New Orleans.
Well, in fact, New Orleans is drying up now. The Gulf is coming in. They're having a
saltwater intrusion.
Saltwater intrusion, and they're having like a kind of a water shortage there. So just imagine if the Mississippi took over the Atchafalaya, what it would do to New Orleans and Baton Rouge. But it would also wipe out Avoyelles Parish pretty much.
Yeah, it would have.
Because there's no way the levees would be able to contain that amount of water.
Yeah, yeah. And, all through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even still today, the Corps of Engineers have been trying to build some major projects down there, locks and dams,
Locks and
what we
dams,
call Old River.
the lower sill structures.
Yeah.
The like the
Well, now
mud
you have the
hole
hydro plant,
and
too.
the hydro plant and all of these diversion canals and stuff that
Yeah.
try to take some of that pressure off
Yeah, to
of.
keep that water in the Mississippi.
Because in '73, the flood of '73, they almost lost the lock.
The control structure.
The control structure, the main lock and dam control structure was getting washed out at the bottom, and the Mississippi River almost took over the Atchafalaya River then.
Yeah.
That year, and it was pretty high, because I remember I was like maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I remember walking on the top of the levee, and I could literally touch the water.
Oh yeah,
it was so high up against the levee, like it almost topped
and
the
stayed
levee.
high for a long time. Too.
Yes,
for almost all summer.
It almost topped the levee here in Simmesport, and it got pretty scary for a lot of people.
Well, also too, remember the Morganza spillway. They wouldn't open.
Yeah, and they wouldn't allow boats because...
And there were bomb threats and all kind of stuff. And then finally, one night, where the spillway connected to the land, it sprung a major leak.
Yeah, I remember
And they almost lost that. They finally had to open the gates.
Right.
And didn't open them again until, 2012? Remember Bobby Jindal?
2011, because Daddy was still alive.
Right.
Because I took him going right out there to go look at all
where they
the
opened
high
those gates.
water and stuff.
Yeah.
And he ended up passing away that December. So, yeah, it was 2011.
Yeah. So, Simsport's a town, about 1,800, 1,600 people right now. I think at its peak, maybe it was around close to 3,000.
I don't know. When we were growing up, it was around 1,200 people.
No, it was around 25.
25?
Yeah, according to the census.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't think it was that many. There were that many people here.
Yeah.
Simmesport growing up was a wonderful place to live. It was
really
kind of like a Mayberry town. Like everybody was either related to one another, or we all grew up like family. Like if I came over here and I was Foodinian, which means being Kanai, and Renee's mama would be like, "Oh no, come here, I'm gonna spank your butt."
Yeah.
And then she'd call my mama and tell her that I was being Kanai, and I'd get a whipping when I got home. It was a community of people raising their children.
Yeah, everybody knew one another. I mean, and you didn't really have any what we would describe as rich people in town.
Well, we had the silk stocking district across the tracks.
Well, yeah, but
where like all the, people that had a little bit more money than us.
Well, that just meant that you had 2 cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was even considered rich.
And brick houses versus wooden houses.
Right, yeah. You're on a slab.
Yeah,
you must be well off.
Not pier and beam.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you didn't have any hoop nets in your front yard.
Yeah, or tar pit in the back,
yeah.
tar vat in the backyard, like on this side of the tracks. That's funny because I thought that, my family was the only one that called it that. But then when in 2018 we had this huge mega reunion here, and so I reconnected with a lot of our classmates, and a lot of my classmates that lived in the silk stocking district actually remember being called the silk stocking district when we were growing up.
But it was a
and Millionaire Lane down Yellow Bayou was where all the rich people lived.
That was new at the time, But yeah, it was a great place to grow up. A lot of little stores and shops, and I think we counted one time. I graduated in 1983. You graduated in 84.
No, you graduated in 84. I graduated in 85.
85, yeah, right. Yeah, sorry.
Mela.
Yeah, Mela. It was 83, 84.
That's a Mela moment. He can't remember when he graduated.
Yeah,
Cole.
Yeah, but I think we counted there were like 9 grocery stores.
Had to be. There was Speedy Pack, Richards, was Big Dixie Dandy.
Dixie Dandy at the time.
They had Miss Emma.
Miss Emma. Yeah.
At one point, Mama and Daddy had a store.
You had Mr. Jesse and them.
E&N, Mr. Jesse.
Yeah, and Richard Morrow had that store.
Yeah. Where else was there stores? I don't know. There were plenty. There were stores. We had Washateria.
Right.
We had It was gas stations.
Right.
Mr. Willie's gas station had the Exxon at the foot of the bridge.
And
They
Mr.
had,
Frank Papera had his
yeah,
gas station.
they had lumber yards.
Right.
Mr. Gerald had a lumber yard. They had the one right there by where Escaday's on the
Mr.
side.
Raymond Dupont.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Churches.
Miss Dot had her little clothing
Yeah.
store, and Mr. Floyd LaCour
Then you had Dubrox. You
Dubrox,
had
right.
Iris.
Yeah.
Hardware and
so
feed.
it was a thriving little town
It
at
was.
one time, and you know, and I think post World War II, you know,
we used to have a sawmill too.
And the sawmill, yeah, it was right in the middle of town.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those young men went off and fought the war, came back, and you know, just started businesses and stayed here.
And then the fish markets. Let's not get to that. My grandfather had a fish market. Had Uncle Dempsey had a fish market. Toto had a fish market.
Right.
Who else had a fish market here in town? There were like 4 or 5 fish markets in town. Some people had them in their yard. My Uncle Junior used to sell fish off of his porch. He would go fish, and he had a big ice chest, freezer, deep freezer, cooler, whatever on his porch, and people would come, and he had a little scale, and he'd sell them fish right off his porch. That's a whole other podcast
we could do about just the fishing.
Yeah, then you had the ice house.
Yeah.
The LaCour ice house. So, and this was just in our generation. We grew up in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
Now, before then, like in my parents' and grandparents' age, back then, well, when we were growing up, there were 2 schools. There was the elementary school and the high school, which was 6th to 12th grade. Elementary school was from kindergarten to 5th grade.
Yeah.
Before that, right before I started school, the elementary school used to be an all-black school called Dunbar, because it was segregated here. But when I started, I think the year before I started kindergarten, the school burnt down.
Yeah, but I never went to segregated. It was always integrated.
Yeah, me too.
By the time we got to school.
By the time I got to school, it had just integrated. I think like in 69 or 70.
In 70, 71, I think it was.
Right. I started school, I think, in 72. Because I was one of the first classes in the new elementary school in kindergarten.
Yeah.
We were one of the first kindergarten classes, and same thing when they built the high school. We were the first 7th grade class in the new school.
Yeah.
But the old 6th grade building stayed. They didn't tear that down. So but we all grew up together. I mean, when I graduated, we had 52 people in my graduating class.
Yeah.
And we pretty much all went to school from kindergarten till we graduated. So we were more like brothers and sisters than classmates. And don't even get me started on dating in high school. Man, talk about man.
Yeah, it was a pretty good chance you might run into a cousin somewhere along the way.
I'd come home from school and I'd tell my mama, oh, they got this cute boy in my class. And she'd say, oh, what's his name? And I'd tell her, she'd say, oh, well, that's your cousin. Man, like, how am I supposed to find a husband when everybody's my cousin?
That's when we had to learn this, who's your mom and them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, who's your mama and him? Who you kin to? And it didn't matter. Even if you came from Plocherville, come to find out my mama and daddy were cousins, distant cousins. My grandma and grandpa were second cousins. Kind of explains why we're all so short and couillon. We don't have any 2-headed people in our family, but
thank God.
So let me tell you, sometimes you would wonder, like,
something went wrong somewhere.
Then you find out that they related, and it's like, oh, that explains. Like my Uncle Noonie, Tikkun.
Oh, yeah. Poor Tikkun. God bless him. Yeah.
He was all over.
You had names like French names, Maya, Guillaume.
Oh, yeah.
Coco.
The Couvillons, the Gremillons.
A lot of
all the Yons.
All the Yons, the Yons.
The Yons, the Couvillons, the Gremillons. The Plochets.
We had some Bilodeaux.
Bilodeaux.
But then you had
Boudreaux.
Italian names like Maddie, some of the other Italian families. Papera.
Oh, yeah, the Paperas.
The Paperas that came here. And then you have the Inglés like me, Whitmore, Graham.
Yeah.
Shinver would be French.
Yeah, well, all my ancestors are Gremillons, Couvillons, Lemoynes, Mayas, Moros, Junos, all the EAUX or EAUs and anything French. Like I take that back because my great my grandmother on my grandfather's side was a Rusk, and that's Scottish. There, we actually have a family crest in Scotland for the Rusk family. So yeah, so that.
And then you had like my grandmother, Mildred Whitmore. She was a Capel. Her grandmother was a Capel. That's German.
German.
You know, you had my mom's dad was Moulard, which sounds French, but it's really Flemish. Oh. It's right on the Swiss-French border. Right. So I don't know if they would be considered French or if they would be considered
see, like I'm,
Swiss. You know,
I'm kid to the bonnets too. Yeah. That's, I don't know what that, if that's French or
yeah, tell us if you know.
Yeah, if you know the origin of some of these family names, and if you're related or have the same family name or have any family members with these names, and you know a little bit of history about this, feel free to comment or message us on Facebook and give us some history, because not only are we trying to educate everyone about our history and the history of Louisiana, but we're also trying to educate ourselves on, because a lot of the stuff that we know is just folklore and hearsay. You know,
preserve some of that history too, because so many families, entire families, have disappeared from the town. Shinvers, Norwoods.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that were big families.
Influential.
30, 40, 50 years ago.
The Earharts.
Earharts, yeah. And
Mr. Bracken.
Right.
The Brackens.
Yeah, I mean, they're just gone. There's none of them left. And the families have all moved away.
So, you know, like if y'all have any information on any of these things, like, we just want to be educated correctly, because a lot of, you know, like my family on both sides of my family, my mom's side and my dad's side, it wasn't until like my grandmother on my mom's side, she graduated when in 1919, I think, or something like that.
Oh wow!
Or 19, I don't know, maybe the 1920s. Yeah, a long time ago. And she was one of the first ones to graduate, but she graduated like in the 11th grade. My grandfather on my dad's side, he had a 5th grade education because he had to quit school to help his dad fish and raise their family.
Yeah.
So a lot of my ancestors were illiterate and they weren't educated. So a lot of the stories we've been told have been verbal. And you know how stories get twisted and turned around over the years.
Yeah.
It could go from, you know, a simple little, like, I dropped my glass, to further down the line, well, when he was glass blowing, you know, so
he broke a window.
Yeah. He was inventing windows when he broke the glass. So, you know, a lot of the stuff that we know, that we've heard, that we've been told over our life could be just folklore or just an exaggeration of the original
confusion
story.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Just,
so
gets them all, you know, all mixed up. And a couple other Italian names, Lasavio and Vaccaro.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I forgot about those.
Speaking of, we had one.
Yeah, we had a Vaccaro on earlier.
Just a while ago.
Exactly.
So, so